She walked onto the plane like anyone else, ticket in hand, smile on her face, just looking forward to a quiet flight in the VIP section she had every right to be in. But before she could even settle in, a flight attendant stopped her. The smile faded. There was an awkward pause, then a quiet request to step aside. Moments later, a white passenger slid into the seat that was supposed to be hers. Confused, the young black woman asked why she was being moved, but the only answer she got was, "We're making adjustments." She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she stepped back, took a deep breath, and made a single call, one short call to her father, who just happened to be the CEO of the airline. What happened next left the entire crew stunned. This wasn't about fame, money, or making a scene. It was about respect, and about standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. No shouting, no public outburst, just quiet power and the kind of influence that doesn't need to prove itself. As passengers looked on, unaware of who she was, the atmosphere shifted. Whispers turned into murmurs, and murmurs into shock as one by one, changes began to unfold, fast, and without warning. Within hours, crew members were escorted off the plane. A corporate message went out. Apologies followed. But that's just the beginning. Because what really happened behind the scenes, and how this young woman used her voice without ever raising it, will make you rethink everything you know about influence, accountability, and dignity. Stay with me, because what she did next didn't just get people fired. It sent a message through the entire airline industry. And it all started with one quiet moment in a crowded cabin. Her name is Maya, just 23, fresh out of grad school, and already working on projects bigger than most people twice her age. Quiet, well-spoken, and calm under pressure, she never felt the need to flaunt who her father was. She believed in earning her place, in letting her work and her presence speak louder than her last name. But on that flight, none of it mattered. Not her ticket, not her grace, not even the simple truth that she belonged in that seat. As she stood quietly near the back of the plane, the words from the crew still echoed in her head. "Sorry, but the front section is already full." Yet she booked her ticket weeks ago. First class. Reserved. Confirmed. Still, her spot had been handed to someone else, without question, without hesitation. Maya wasn't the type to make assumptions, but she noticed things. How the crew barely made eye contact. How they spoke in hushed tones after asking her to move. How the white woman now relaxing in her seat hadn't even looked back. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it was personal. That's when she called her dad. What the staff didn't know was that her father wasn't just an airline executive, he was the CEO. The man who built the company from the ground up. And while Maya never liked pulling that card, something told her this time was different. This wasn't about special treatment. It was about being seen, being heard, being treated with the same dignity every other paying passenger expected. She didn't say much on the call, just the basics. Then she hung up and waited. 10 minutes later, the flight was delayed. Then the whispers started again. Something big was happening, and nobody on board knew just how far it would go. The plane sat idle on the runway, lights dimmed, cabin unusually quiet. Passengers shifted in their seats, whispering about the delay. A few checked their watches, some grew annoyed. But Maya sat still, eyes forward, heart racing, not from fear, but from a quiet storm brewing inside her. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. She wasn't trying to cause a scene. Yet somehow, she had become the center of something much bigger than just a flight delay. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, the captain had just received an urgent call from airline headquarters. Not a routine update. This one came with instructions. Direct, immediate, and from the very top. Within minutes, the head flight attendant was pulled aside. A tense conversation followed. Whispers turned to raised eyebrows, and then an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a brief delay due to an internal matter. We appreciate your patience." Maya didn't move. She wasn't looking for revenge. But she couldn't ignore how quickly she had been dismissed, how easily her presence had been brushed aside. She knew this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every black girl who's ever been told to step aside, every quiet act of exclusion that goes unnoticed. This time, it wasn't going unnoticed. At the same time, back at headquarters, the CEO was on another call. Calm, but clearly not pleased. He asked for names, times, exact details. What his daughter had experienced was unacceptable, not because she was his daughter, but because it was part of a pattern he could no longer afford to ignore. Inside the plane, the woman sitting in Maya's seat still hadn't spoken a word. She avoided eye contact, sensing something was off. The tension thickened, and deep inside the company, wheels were turning, fast and unstoppable. The tension on board was thick enough to cut through. 30 minutes had passed, and still, no one knew exactly what was going on. The seatbelt sign remained off. The engines were quiet. Flight attendants moved up and down the aisle with stiff smiles, their eyes darting nervously toward the front cabin. Passengers started asking questions, but answers were vague. Just a technical issue, they were told. But Maya knew better. This wasn't about equipment. From her seat in the middle row, she caught glimpses of hurried conversations near the cockpit. One crew member walked out, phone in hand, whispering into it with a face that said this wasn't routine. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but she could hear a few words. Head office, protocol, seat assignment error. No apology yet, just panic. Back in the operations center, things were moving fast. The CEO had already spoken to legal. HR was looped in. Reports were being pulled. Flight logs, seat manifests, even internal emails. He was piecing together a timeline, and the picture wasn't looking good. The flight crew had made a judgment call, but this one was personal, and it was about to become public. On board, the woman in Maya's original seat finally asked to speak with someone. Her voice was low, but her discomfort had clearly grown. The flight attendant leaned in, listened, nodded, but didn't answer. Something was shifting. Everyone could feel it. And then came the sound that raised the stakes even higher. The intercom crackled, and the captain's voice returned, this time quieter, more serious. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the continued delay. We are currently addressing an urgent personnel matter before takeoff. People turned. Eyes fell on Maya. She didn't flinch. She didn't need to say a word. Because the storm was no longer coming, it had arrived. Just as passengers began to settle into the tension, thinking things couldn't get any stranger, a man in a sharp grey suit stepped onto the plane. He wasn't part of the cabin crew. He didn't wear a badge or pilot's uniform, but the way he moved, calm, direct, all eyes tracking him, he clearly held authority. He quietly showed something to the lead flight attendant, who nodded quickly and disappeared into the front galley. Moments later, the captain exited the cockpit and approached the man. They exchanged only a few words, but it was enough. The captain looked stunned. Maya watched it all unfold without moving. She didn't need to ask who the man was. That was her father's head of internal affairs, a fixer, someone you only saw when the situation was serious. And this situation had officially crossed that line. But then something happened that even Maya didn't expect. The suited man pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen, and read out loud, not to the passengers, but to the crew. Quietly, firmly, a list of names, 4 of them, all crew members, including the flight attendant who had first asked Maya to move. Gasps rippled through the back of the plane as the selected staff were quietly asked to step aside. No raised voices, no explanations, just a slow, surreal walk off the aircraft. Passengers whispered behind covered mouths. Phones started to appear, recording snippets of what felt like a silent storm rolling through the cabin. But before anyone could make sense of what had just happened, the second twist dropped. The woman still sitting in Maya's original seat, she wasn't just a random passenger. She worked for a major travel blog with millions of followers, and she had already posted about the flight, sharing a carefully filtered photo and her version of events. Within minutes, it was going viral. As the travel blogger's post gained traction, comments flooded in. Screens lit up across the cabin as passengers started reading the real-time storm brewing online. Some showed sympathy, others demanded answers. Hashtags began trending. Hashtag airline bias and hashtag Maya was moved popped up across platforms. The narrative was shifting fast, and this time it wasn't being controlled by anyone inside the plane. Maya sat quietly, watching the ripple effect of one moment of silence. Her father hadn't called her back yet, but she didn't need confirmation. She could feel it. This wasn't just about her seat anymore. It had turned into a wake-up call for an entire company. One mistake, made in seconds, had now lit up the internet and sparked a conversation far beyond the walls of that plane. Then, in the middle of the chaos, a new voice came over the intercom, not the captain's. It was the suited man. Calm, measured, and serious. He apologized, not just for the delay, but for what had happened. "We failed to uphold our values today," he said. "That will be corrected." And then came the final twist. The woman in Maya's seat stood up. She walked over, not to confront Maya, but to hand her the phone. Her hand trembled slightly. "Your story matters more than mine," she said. "Tell it." Maya took the phone. The screen was still open to the blogger's post. She tapped edit, then added her own words, short, clear, and powerful. Asterisk. This seat was never about privilege. It was about being seen. Let's not stay quiet when it counts. Asterisk. The post went live. Within hours, the airline issued a public statement. Policies were being reviewed. Mandatory bias training was announced. The crew involved would not return to that route. Maya never raised her voice. She didn't need to. The world heard her anyway. By the time the flight finally took off, the energy on board had completely shifted. The crew had been replaced with a new team flown in from a nearby terminal. Passengers clapped, not out of celebration, but out of quiet relief. Order had returned, but the moment had already left its mark. People had seen what happened. They had witnessed the power of presence, of restraint, of using quiet strength to make lasting change. Maya didn't take the VIP seat. She asked to remain where she was. It wasn't about comfort anymore. It was about making sure no one ever had to go through what she did, especially in silence. Her father called after landing. He didn't say much, just that he was proud of how she handled it. That meant more to her than any statement or press release. The blogger, now aware of the full story, updated her post. She admitted she hadn't known the seat wasn't hers. She apologized publicly and asked her followers to learn from the experience instead of feeding the outrage. Her followers responded with respect. A few even shared their own stories of quiet discrimination, moments brushed off, stories untold. Maya had unintentionally created a space for those voices. In the weeks that followed, the airline began rolling out changes. Not just new policies, but conversations, training, and anonymous reporting tools for staff and passengers alike. The company didn't try to hide the incident. They faced it, and that's what made the difference. Maya went back to her life. No interviews, no fame, no press tour. She never needed the spotlight. Her message had already landed. Because in the end, the story wasn't about her last name or a first-class seat. It was about dignity and the power of choosing not to be silent.